I have the pleasure and honor of introducing our keynote speaker. Few individuals can claim to have influenced the web as we know it, like Emmit McHenry. Born in Tulsa as the eldest of 9 children, McHenry is a product of Tulsa Public Schools, attending Stewart Elementary and George Washington Carver Middle Schools prior to graduating from the Booker T. Washington High School. In 1966, he received his undergraduate degree in communications from the University of Denver, where he also competed as a collegiate wrestler. He enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, earning a commission rank as a lieutenant. McHenry earned a master's degree from Northwestern University, where he later served as an instructor and assistant dean. He also completed the qualifying examinations for a doctorate. In 1979, McHenry founded Network Solutions, a company that shaped the modern internet technology. And with 200 employees and accruing $260 million in revenue, he directly led several groundbreaking innovations: the development of the first internet protocols, the creation of .com, .net, .ed, and .gov, generic top-level domains. And the management of the world's first domain registry. He ultimately facilitated the sale of network solutions to VeriSign for $21 billion in 2000. McHenry is also credited with developing the domain name system, which serves as the phone book of the internet. Among the many companies he has created, today he is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Virginia-based Cycleron. With Cycleron, McHenry is focused on designing end-to-end cyber security solutions for government and commercial enterprises. Beyond his rich entrepreneurial career, McHenry has distinguished himself as a mentor, communicator, and motivator, traveling extensively to virtually all corners of the globe, serving on dozens of boards, and accumulating numerous honors and awards. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker. Oh, I was just told we're going to give 10 minutes to eat. All right. So, Mr. McHenry, we're going to give you 10 minutes. 10 minutes, but he has been introduced to us, so the next voice you will hear is Emmit McHenry.
Well, I'm delighted to be here and for the board for inviting me. Thank you. You're very kind and thoughtful and overly exaggerating about me. So let me give you rule number 1. I'm really the same guy I was when I went to Booker T. Washington. Same guy. I was a learning organism then. I'm still a learning organism. So it all worked out. I had dinner last night with a group, and we were talking about the past. And at the end of the evening, I was being driven to my hotel, and I said, you know, Booker T. Washington is a special place in my heart. And he said, I can tell it's a special place. So let me talk a little bit about Booker T. Washington, me, and some things more important than all of that, we. So I'm a kid who, at Carver Junior High School, I thought I had the best thing going because I had an English teacher who was a journalism major but couldn't get a job in journalism, but she taught great English. And that was impressive. I had a science teacher who had been in the Air Force who was a musician and really understood physics. This is in junior high school. And so I had the experience of doing science fairs. Anyone remember science fairs? Well, I was one of those kids who participated in science fairs. The first science fair, I'd never been in a science fair before. I said, gee, what am I going to do? What am I going to make? And I came with this idea that there are a set of math functions that you can apply machine functionality to demonstrate. So, Mr. Cannon, I grew up on Madison Street, by the way. I lived in the vacant lot now, just across from the swimming pool. Yeah. And the most significant things about that is that between the 8th and 9th grade, I read Einstein's biography. So I decided I was going to become a physicist. Guy who studies motion, movement, all that jazz. It was fun. So at Carver, so I developed my first experiment with machines. Now we do, some kid doing those things I did would do it in software. That's just how the world changed. My second experiment was a dental experiment. I thought that people who brushed their teeth before breakfast were different, their mouths were different than people who brushed their teeth after breakfast. So I got all these test tubes, and I got some people who volunteered to give me saliva when they got to school. And my experiment showed there was a difference. There were more solids in the mouth of those. Hey, I was a kid. What do I know? I'm just a kid. You know, I'm a learning organism. Just trying to go around and figure out the world. That was all. So it was a great place. And then I haven't gotten money, asked for money, since I was 12 years old. No allowances. I always had a job. I control at least 2 blocks of jobs on Madison. If you needed your grass cut, if you needed a fence painted, and there's Princetta's here. Her father had me doing his work for a while until I cut his wine, one of his wine growth vines with a sickle. And I did not know how to repair that. I didn't know anything about grafting. That was my last job there. But about that time, I had a paper route. And I contend that my paper route is the source of my entrepreneurism. Think about it. We had to sell the neighbors on buying the paper. We had to get up early in the morning, pack a bag, and go deliver the papers. And on Fridays, we had to go collect the money. Some days it was Saturday, we had to collect the money. Some days it was next week, we had to go collect the money. Sounds like business to me, right? Yeah. So that was a wonderful experience. It was a great experience. I learned a lot about negotiating and selling. And in my neighborhood, I think it kind of established a sense that I was a working kid. Just a working kid, right? And all of that worked out well because in my neighborhood, my street was really my neighborhood. It was a bigger neighborhood, but my street was my neighborhood. So I had the lawyer, I had the guy who owned the junk or scrap metals business. We usually call it junk. I found out from him it was scrap metals, and he did quite well in scrap metals. He had been educated as a landscape architect. Couldn't find a job as a landscape architect. So he did the next best thing. His house, I thought, was the most beautiful house. He designed it himself, built it himself. Now I go back to it, it's not as large, nor is it as fabulous as he kept it, because he's been dead for a long time. He's the guy that set me on his stoop. Now, he had 3 daughters and 2 sons, but some reason he set me on his stoop, because I was a paper boy, and he told me about economics and economic models, and got me thinking about things in terms of not just in and out, but longer term and et cetera. Great experience. Many years later, I had an operation in Oklahoma City. I had 250,000 square feet of space in Oklahoma City, and I took my son, we drove across country so that he could spend a summer between high school and college working in that facility. And of course, we had to come to Tulsa. And we stopped by to visit Mr. Cannon, and all the ladies, they got older. They were such young, beautiful women when I was a little kid, and they got older like me. I said, what happened? But anyway, that's another story. That's the real human piece of it. And my son and I sat on the same stoop that he and I sat on, and he said, you know, son, your dad and I, we ... I'm saying, you just set him up for his summer job. I mean, I can talk to him about a lot of stuff, but hearing you say what I've been saying that you told me really set him up. My son is now my business partner in Cycurion. I want to say that again, Cycurion, C-Y-C-U-R-I-O-N. That's our cybersecurity business. We've been in business together in several companies over the years. And recently, one of our board members said she wanted to help him. Okay. He's 50 years old now. He's been in business since he was 18 years old. I'm sure you can help him, but don't treat him like a kid. He's not a kid. I'm often struck by the fact that we people of a certain age forget what we were doing when we were the age of the people we're talking about as kids, right? You know, they're not kids. And so we shouldn't treat them like kids. That's an interesting. So all of this stuff happened here in Tulsa. I was blessed. I was telling some folks that I used to play in the band at Carver. Played trombone. Loved it. But being a poor kid, I had to figure out how I was going to go to college. Now, before I talk about going to college, I used to have hair. And I went to a barber shop. And as I sat in the barber shop chair, I listened. And one of the stories that was told more than once were the guys who had gone to college but failed because they were distracted by what? Girls and partying. So I knew I wasn't going to do that, but more importantly, I was going to go to college. And so I had to figure out, how am I going to do this? Because remember, I've had my own money since I was 12 years old. So I looked around at the things I could do, I thought could build. I was an athlete. I was a musician, pretty good student. There were guys in my junior high school who could listen to something on the radio and play it. I could read music and play it, but they could play it from just hearing it. So no, I don't think that's going to be it. A, they don't have as many scholarships in music, and B, there are some great musicians in this school, Booker T. Washington, at George Washington Carver, already. Depicted by when I walk out here and see some of these musicians, I'm amazed. I want a book of that. So I decided I'd drop music when I went to Booker T. Washington, and I would focus on academics, football, basketball, and track. You probably have heard of Coach Lacey. After the first year of football, I'm out for basketball with my little jump shot, my little dribbling. Coach Lacey came up and said, McHenry? Yes, Coach. Well, I think you should come out here and wrestle. It'll be good for your football. He had just started a wrestling team, by the way. So he took Alonzo Edwards and me. to wrestle. Ended up being a good thing because that's what I was recruited for to go to college, was to wrestle, not football and all that other stuff. So my plan did work. I did get the scholarship, and I got to go to the kind of school I wanted to go to, the University of Denver. Alonzo went to another school in Colorado as well. The difference between our schools, the athletes lived in trailers, and athletes at Denver lived in dorms, so you had a different cultural thing going there. But he came to visit, and we would hang out a little bit in Denver, which was good. Good guy. First time I met him was, I spent a summer at Bunch, or some part of school at Bunch, and in the boys' room, Alonzo and I got into a fight. What for? Because it was Alonzo and it was me. And later I realized we looked kind of alike. He was just a little bigger than me. As paper boys, Alonzo and I got into a fight at some lake we went to. I said, "What's this all for?" And we became the best of friends. Wrestling was a thing that we did very well. Someplace there are records about some of that, I think. And it's amazing how conflict, challenges can create real bonds. And we bonded in a very significant way. Well, that's stuff. One of the things about that period, being a learning organism, I was always thinking about stuff. In junior high school, I designed a rocket. I designed a combustion engine chamber that was unique, et cetera. And there was another guy, Sylvester. Was it Sylvester? Did we talk about it the last time when I stayed at your house? Percy. Percy was flying rockets. I might tell you that he was flying rockets. This was a high-risk activity because I think he was using black powder to fly rockets, and he had no navigation. So his rockets would go over people's houses and stuff. I'm unaware of any serious incident, but that was kind of our group. I mean, a lot of kids interested in stuff, thinking about things, doing things that maybe the rest of the world had no idea that was happening in the Tulsa of then. In what part of our neighborhood, what's that called? Madison. Where does that fit into the city? It's north of downtown. It's south of where the growth occurred. What would you call that? North of downtown. North of downtown. No-go, okay. Lodo. North of downtown. Yeah. Very good. So that's some of the stuff. So that's by way of some background things that you might find of interest. Look, when I went to university, I went to study physics. Interesting. I ended up tutoring a lot of kids who were studying physics. I was the only black kid in physics at the time. And I got a grade back that was unacceptable. So I had to go challenge the professor on this grade. I mean, because A, I knew the answers, and B, in those questions that you had to be inventive around, I was one of the things I learned, I didn't tell you this piece. I went to the University of Tulsa in a summer program sponsored by the National Science Foundation. And it was Herb Scott, and I don't know whether Clay went or not. Herb went in math, and I went in physics. At the same time, I was working 8-hour shifts at night at the 1800 Club. Does anyone remember the 1800 Club? It was not a gentleman's club, but it was a gentleman's club. The 1800 Club was a men's dining club, and women only came on Wednesdays if invited by a man. Can you believe that? So many things have changed, right? Amazing to think that there was a dining club for men only. I mean, What were they doing that was so important that they need to be alone? Yeah. Probably a little mafiosa in the back corners that I didn't pick up on or something. I don't know. Anyway, so it was an interesting time. I often share with folk that Tulsa was important to me. Booker T. Washington was important to me. I must have been not quite as astute because I thought the schools were integrated except for Booker T. Washington. Spent a lot of time at Edison doing stuff, and I just missed it. We had friends who went to Central. I didn't think about Webster and those other schools. Just didn't for somehow, though we played sports against them. I'm often fascinated by selective memory. I select on positive. You can live your life lots of ways. One of them, you can take the bad stuff that happened back there and keep it right here. Success comes when you can acknowledge that and leave it where it was and be in the moment. If I have a gift, it's about being in the moment. So I moved from physics to a communications program that was like nothing else you'd seen. It was really semantics, general semantics. And there was a lot of numbers, a lot of economic models associated with it in its own right. And there was a guy, one of the great concepts I learned from there is the map is not the territory. Meaning, what you see on the map is what you see on the map. It's not being in the place. Another quaint saying is, you can't step in the same river twice. Meaning, the river is in flow. All this sounds like physics, doesn't it? The river's in flow. You put your foot in it, you take your foot out, and you try to put your foot back. What was there is gone. Part of the challenge in life is recognizing that and giving people the opportunity not to be the same as they were. Lots of things are happening in their lives. Give them the chance to be different. Yeah. So that was the stuff. When I was getting, and I tore up my knee my sophomore year. The first day, the day before the first wrestling match, in the wrestling room, wrestling with a guy who shouldn't have been in the room, and I didn't want to take advantage of him, hurt him. And I got hurt. Important lesson. Both my son and my grandson are both wrestlers. My son won a big championship in Russia, was voted the most outstanding wrestler there. My grandson is twice world champion in freestyle wrestling. And I told them both the same thing. If you're going to wrestle, wrestle all out. Never, never take it easy with another person wrestling, because someone will get hurt and the probability will be you. It's real. Be real all the time with it. Yeah. Lessons learned. So am I boring you yet, guys, with my story? Because, you know, I can talk some other stuff. Okay, good. I heard a laugh. I didn't hear a no. Okay. Well, I got a group of friends at this table in my class, so I know they'll do this or that or something to get me off stage. When I was doing all this communication stuff, I had a very important understanding. The most important skill any of us have, the most important, is our ability to communicate and relate to other humans. It's nice to communicate and relate to a horse also, I might add. Believe it or not, some similar kind of things take place. But the people who can communicate authenticity to other human beings enriches their lives and our own lives at the same time. You yawn one more time, I'm going to send you back. I know it's late. It's late. and that was an important understanding to get. And so when I was graduating, I had some options: go directly to graduate school to get a job. I went to University of Colorado initially in graduate school, and then I heard about friends who had gone to work for IBM instead of going directly to graduate school. So I started reading all the advertising that IBM did. I had been lucky that a haberdasher had asked me between my sophomore and junior year what I was going to do when I graduated, and I said, I'm probably going to go into business or graduate school. He said, well, if you're going to go into business, you need to have a wardrobe. So let's start building your wardrobe. There was a company called Dean Gates who did made-to-order clothing. Now, at the time, I was a different body than I am now. But it helped to have someone who could measure me and make the stuff that I needed. So I had 3 white button-down shirts made. I had a blue suit made. The next year, I had 3 more button-down shirts made, white, and a gray pinstripe suit. So when I read all this IBM stuff, I was set. Oh, and I had cordovan shoes. Anyone remember cordovan shoes? Yeah. Hard as nails, last forever. I had a wife that threw mine away. I'd had them so long. I think she gave it to Goodwill. So I went down to meet with IBM. It was new stuff. And I sold them IBM. I dressed like an IBMer. I knew all the buzzwords that they were using in their ads. I gave them back to IBM. And they asked, what do you want for a salary? That day, on the spot, I'm going, gee whiz, I had no idea about that. I knew one guy that I worked with. He had gotten a master's degree. He had started with IBM for $7,500 a year. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But teachers were making $3,500, $3,700 a year, right? So, in context. He got $7,500. So I said 10. And I got 10. It was like, my God, $10,000. Because I could do more with $10,000 then than I can do with the money I've got now. Whatever the money is I got now. I tell myself I don't pay myself enough. That's the reason I say things like this, right? And that, again, was a wonderful experience. It built on the foundation of things I had learned in undergraduate school, what I had learned in Tulsa, in my high school, in the neighborhood, developing relationships. I mean, first week I was elected to an office of my class. We had classes at IBM. We had morning songs at IBM. We had 7 weeks of training, then you go back to your core office and then come back for 7 more. And as my friend from IBM would know, and he came after me, in those years, I was at the transition between unit record equipment and the 360. 360, you wrote code for the unit record equipment. You plug boards. You became a wiring engineer or wiring problem solver. And I got good at that. It all worked out well. Same time I was being drafted, because I started being drafted. Something about Tulsa. They started drafting me as a sophomore in college, and they never stopped until I went into the military. Said, give a kid a break, will ya? Well, that's a long story. A lot of things happened in the Marine Corps. Overall, I'm blessed. I'm blessed beyond imagining. I ended up paralyzed in traction for a long time. Fortunately, I had a discussion with a doctor. He wanted to do surgery. I said, do you know anyone else who's had a problem similar to me? He said, well, yes, I have a similar problem to you. I said, have you had surgery? He said, no. I said, no surgery. We'll figure out something. And that began a deep exploration of Eastern philosophy. And yoga saved me. It helped me rebalance my body. And so I've never had surgery. I have had incidents, but never surgery. And an incident is when you sit in a chair like the ones you're sitting in and you feel your back going, this isn't good for your posture, straighten up. Or you sit over the computer too long and your neck starts cramping, this isn't good. Put your shoulders back, get that head up, get the weight off your spine. But all in all, it was good. I've been blessed, I've had a good life. I have a saying, don't let the good get in the way of the great. So I was a corporate guy when I got out of the Marine Corps and had great jobs. Ended up doing corporate turnaround stuff. I led the redesign of organizations. Good living, making money. And then I had this quacky idea about a convergence of voice and data communications, going back to my old IBM experience, the stuff I had experienced in corporate America. And I told someone about it. And they said, what you gonna do about it? Ergo, I started my first company, Network Solutions. Now, you need to know a lot of things happen along the way. You take the money for the mortgage and you put it to paying employees, a whole bunch of stuff. You recognize all that communication stuff that you believed in. Now you got to really practice it because you need all these technical people and you got to make teams out of them. They got to be teams because no one, not even Einstein, can completely do greatness without other people. It's a collaborative effort. All the things I've been involved in, things weren't quite accurate in the presentation, but large measure, it makes sense, have always been around finding smart people and being able to establish a mission and a vision that they can buy into. This morning, I was on the phone with India. Last week, I was on the phone with Israel. Next week, I'll be integrating the people I met with on the phone. This is video phone, Zoom. The Zoom folks I had in Israel and the Zoom folks in India, I'm bringing them together to focus on something different than what they're currently doing. We're in the cybersecurity business today. We started cybersecurity when we founded Network Solutions and did the TCP/IP protocol and for the internet communications. When we started the internet program, we started doing cybersecurity. And like many things, I went to Africa and Asia and other places doing other businesses and walked away from it. About 4 years ago, it was really clear to me that this was the opportunity of the moment for people like me who know the things I know, do the things I do. And so we started Cycurion as a cybersecurity company. We wanted to do technology-enabled security. A lot of ways you can do security. You can have people monitoring stuff. You can have AI, learning devices, picking up and monitoring things for you, and then people just look in now and then. Or you can create solutions that look at all the nodes in the network and you monitor all of those and you use your machine learning algorithms to take attack data and pass it on to everybody and create solutions that every element can see at the same time, pretty much in real time, right? So that's who we are. We're that latter piece. The vision I had was to create a cybersecurity company with really smart people, cleared people who work in the intel community of our US government, because they are the best. They do things that they never talk about. They solve problems that never get into the media because their clearances are at risk if they were to talk about those things. But the skill set is what we wanted. The next piece, we wanted to find companies that had contract vehicles with the federal government because we wanted them as our initial client. And we're going to build onto that to go after the commercial marketplace. We're now at that point where we have built enough that we can go after the commercial marketplace. And blockchain that you hear a lot about for cryptocurrency and crypto mining stuff, and artificial intelligence are all a part of our solution suite that we bring to the marketplace. You know, I knew nothing about that as a kid. You didn't know anything about that as a kid. Because we're constantly learning and creating, we have to also learn to integrate the new. One of the things I also think about, never let age or past experience limit you from a new dream or take on a new challenge in life. It's only foundational. It shouldn't be limiting. So this new venture that we're getting into, that we're doing, we're probably going to take that public between now and the first quarter of next year. So that's one of the pieces. Along the way of doing this, I've also gotten involved in personal identity management. If you read, some of you read some of the technical stuff, you realize that passwords are passé. Multi-factor authentication is really the route today, that you want to be able to access things without typing your name or whatever your code might be, because we all forget that stuff, right? And yet, we've created an algorithm that has 120 points for facial recognition, which is larger than the standard. And we do retinal scanning as well, and we have a show of liveness to show that you're real, that you're human, that you are alive. It's not something someone else is going to put in front. Because with all this fake digital stuff today, you can do lots of things. But when you ask the right question about liveness, no one's come up with a way yet to mimic that in real time. So that's the stuff we're working on. It's interesting. It's not what I was thinking about 6 years ago. I'm 78. Some of you are almost as old as I am. And I find that I am, my name recall is shot to SHIT of people, but my processor is just, I get high on my processor, you know? I go for a long, I'm a hiker. I walk to think, I walk to create. On average, I do north of 5 miles a day. And at 3 miles plus, something happens in my brain. Something chemically happens in my brain. And I suddenly become kind of smart. So I have to keep doing the walking so I can be kind of smart. And maybe by 120, I'll have some new chips that I can put here, so I'm automatically smart. I don't have to worry about it so much. But anyway, so I think normally I speak to young people. I enjoy speaking to young people because all I have to do is hope that I can change the life of one. Recently, I spoke to a Catholic boys' school, 200 young men and their parents and families, with Zoom, of course. And my goal was only to affect the life of one in a significant way. And they called me, oh, maybe I affected more than one. So that was a huge reward, right? I mean, my expectations are never so high that I can't believe the possibility of meeting them. I may seem a little odd, but I've always been the same guy. I was always a little odd. A little odd. Not weird, just a little odd. I knew some weird cats I went to school with, but I was just a little odd. You know? I hope that you all will be just a little odd, remembering because you're retired, you don't have to be retired. You still have juices to flow. Let an older man be an example of juices flowing. And if you don't want to let them flow, it's all right. Sit on a chair, soak up the sun, have a nice martini, tell old stories. Just remember, young people are watching what you do. So you can be a model of what you think they should be when they're your age, or you can just be. I kind of just be most of the time. Thank you so much for having me. We got some great... Thank you. I looked at the list of new members to this family here of the honored. Splendid, splendid. Just, I'm so, so, so proud of you, so proud to be a part of the same organization. And unlike someone who said he didn't want to be a part of any club that someone wanted him in, I think, was that some humorist from Oklahoma? Will Rogers, did he say something like that? Will Rogers, I think. I want to be a part of the club that you're a part of. And maybe if I stay young enough, for some of you young guys, we can do some work together. Good night.